I want to start this meeting by saying what a terrific team you all have been this entire year. And, just smart, thoughtful, thorough, and careful. And just could not ask for a better group of colleagues. And I am just honored to work with you. And especially this last week when I was knocked out sick and you guys just stepped up beautifully. And what can I tell you? Thank you. The meeting is now in order. And the first item of agenda is approval of our minutes. And I do want to take a moment here at our last meeting to thank Elizabeth for faithfully and diligently doing the minutes all year. It's really been terrific, very thorough, very, very well organized, and very well done. So can we
You,
give
Marty,
Elizabeth
I must say it gets faster each time as I have a blueprint to follow. So,
Well, you've been doing ace work. Are there any additions or changes to the minutes? They're in the packet for today's meeting? I
No,
thought. All right, a motion to approve the minutes, please.
I approve. I move to
I
approve.
second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. All right, unanimous. And again, thank you to you, Elizabeth. All right, the next item I'd like to talk about is an administrative item, which was in the packet today too. Elizabeth was kind enough to take very good notes during the forum. And as we all recall, there were a lot of good ideas that were raised by residents or by the candidates during the forum, and she consolidated them into a nice report, which is in our packet today.
Yeah.
And one of the things Elizabeth suggested was that we include that sort of forum notes document in our final report. It's one section of our final election report. And I think that's a good idea, but I wanted to talk about it with you guys. We have not done it in the past, but man, there's some good ideas there. Did you all have a chance to look at that?
Yes,
Yep.
and lovely ideas. Wonderful
Okay.
ideas.
Any
Yeah.
objections? Any other comments?
No,
Well,
I think they're great too. I think they should be published.
yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to say the inspiration for that was because they were addressing, I mean, the nature of the questions that were asked were things like how to enhance participation in council meetings and committees, which is a definite need, and how to build stronger community, and how to enhance priority setting by the council. All those things are practical suggestions. So it just seemed like, and especially since they were being, some of them proposed by council members themselves, those running for office, that they should be noted and reviewed by other council members. So
Right, we got the new council taking its
Yeah.
seats July 1st, and I think
Yeah.
it's a real gift to them. And again, I thank you for putting it together. And I would say, does anybody have any edits to it at all? If
Yeah.
so, you do?
Take off the word draft, Marty.
I will. I will.
right.
That's easy.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Take another look at it, you guys, including you, Elizabeth. If you have any final changes, let me know.
All right.
Otherwise, tomorrow I will go ahead and put in final and, prepare it as being one section of our final report. If we have a
Okay.
motion tonight, do we have a motion to actually include this in our final report?
I so move.
A second?
I second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 4-0. Very good. And Elizabeth, thank you again. It's a really, really
Mhm.
nice piece of work. I think a real good
Okay.
addition to the report.
Thank you.
So, anybody's got any minor edits? Get them to me by
And
tomorrow.
Naomi
Yeah.
obviously helped to draft that because
Yes.
we were there together.
That's right. That's right. Thank you both. And you guys did just such a great job on the forum. I was just so impressed and would love to have you do it permanently. You can be our permanent forum moderators. Anyway, thank you again. So we have a vote to include
Well,
that in.
actually, you guys as moderators for a forum, you actually joined the ranks with another famous Martin's Editions resident, Hal Bruno. Do
Really?
you guys remember Hal Bruno?
I do.
So Hal Bruno, if you remember, did the debate between who was it, Clinton and his first time he ran. He was the moderator for that first debate.
Wow.
And
So distinguished ranks here.
and Hal Bruno was on our fire board for 20 years.
Wow.
He actually wrote articles, and he was considered quite an expert on both volunteer and paid firefighting services throughout the United States.
Huh,
And you won't
Who knew?
believe how he got involved with that. He grew up in Chicago. He was an orphan, and the fire stations in Chicago had a tradition where they would take in orphans, and that's where he grew up, was in a fire station.
wow.
Interesting.
That is a
Wow.
great, amazing thing to know.
Um,
Thank you, Larry.
Yeah.
Boy, talk about local history. That's wonderful to know. Hal Bruno, Elizabeth Goldberg, and Nomi Neyerman. What a
Yep.
team. Okay. Um, we have no residents at the meeting, so we'll skip the residents' comments, questions, and suggestions, and go for the first action item, which is following on here, discussion of our final 2025 election report, which includes the recommendations. The first part of that report will be similar to what we've done for our monthly council meeting reports, which is just a sort of one-page summary of the basic mechanics. And the model for that is, well, the May council meeting report, the April council meeting report. It's broken out by sections, and it's just very, very summary. So that's basically done. I just need to update it. And that's a one-pager, essentially. The second part of the report is recommendations of what we need to do, or what we would recommend that next year's committee would do. And I think you
Right.
all saw the very rough draft recommendations that I sent around over the weekend. Larry, did you get a
Yeah.
chance to see
Yes.
that?
No, I haven't, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I had 8 recommendations. And let me pull my page up here and to you. Okay. It starts out saying that we made a number of improvements in the election regs this year, restoring standard important election provisions like the mandatory inclusion of the forum and the drop box, both which were restored this year, and that protects voting rights. We also added a provision to define the procedure for election recounts. That was a good addition. And we got that very significant document from the 5 residents who'd done the village charter back in 1985 to clarify the legislative intent of the charter. There's still some things to be done in terms of the ability of the election committee to conduct independent elections, and a number of other items. So I had 8 recommendations. The first one says, update the regulations to ensure independent election management per the charter, the statement of legislative intent, and the procedures recommended by the 24 and 25 election committees. And are we in favor of making that recommendation?
Yes.
Okay.
I am.
Anybody opposed?
Absolutely.
In favor? Can we have a
Yes.
motion?
Yes.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Actually, motion. We need to do a motion first. A motion to
but,
include.
excuse me, we're voting on recommendation by recommendation? Is that
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
doing?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we have 8 of them.
Right.
Okay, so first one is about updating the regs to ensure independent management.
Yeah.
And we need a motion to approve that and a second.
I
Second.
move. I
No,
move.
I second it.
all right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay, no opposed? All right,
No.
put an okay on that 4-1. The next one is update the regulations to specifically state that the committee's public notices shall not be altered or delayed by other parties. As
Right.
you all know, there were several points this year at which our election notices were changed between what we sent in and what actually got posted, and that was somewhat upsetting. And I think that Arthur actually made a point saying that, well, there's nothing in the regs that says that they can't be altered, and that was technically right. I mean, there is no specific statement that says you can't do
Okay,
that.
let's clarify that.
That's what this is. So the motion is or we need a motion to update the regulations to specifically state that the committee's public notices shall not be altered or delayed by other parties. Anyone move that?
I so move.
Larry
I
moves.
second.
No, we say all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that one's in. The next one is to update the regulations to specify the requirements for the public presentation of election committee reports and timely public information about proposals and comment periods. There were some obstacles this year. At the December council meeting, you all may recall, the council interrupted our presentation of our report and prevented us actually from presenting key sections of our public report. That was a shock. I know we all talked about it at the time. There was also a 1 week delay in posting the proposed 2025 election regs and a 2 week delay in posting the public notice that there was a 30-day public comment period going on. So basically, the public notice about the comment period didn't come out till halfway through it, which certainly was disconcerting. So the proposed change is update the regulations to specify the requirements for the public presentation of election-related reports and timely public information about proposals and comment periods. We have a motion to approve that?
I have one, should not the word timely be in front of timely public presentation of related reports and
I
public
see. Put timely
information?
up front. Yeah, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, so that applies to both of those ideas in
Right.
that phrase, okay.
Gotcha. That's a good edit. Okay, with that edit, is there a motion to adopt this
Because
recommendation?
timeliness was the issue, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Or one of the
I
issues.
I move to adopt it.
Second.
A second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, no opposed, so that one's in. Okay, the fourth one is amend the regulations to require the return address on the packets to be the VMA election committee, not the contractor, so that in the future, the committee will know about delivery problems early enough to take remedial action.
That's a great.
And that's a direct response to the situation that happened on our
Absolutely.
vote counting night.
Absolutely. That's a great idea, Marty.
Well, thank you. I'm occasionally smart. And again, I mean, it was just so disconcerting to us, and to only find out after the fact. And the simple remedy is have our committee be the return address.
Yes,
Right.
okay.
Is there a motion to adopt that recommendation?
I move to adopt that recommendation.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, number 4 is good. Okay. The fifth one was add a referendum procedure next year to the regulations. Referendums are an essential voting right and, a standard part of election procedures in every civilized election. And we still don't have a referendum procedure here in BMA. And this come up many times over the years about, well, how would you do a referendum? And the 2024 committee came up with a very simple, good procedure. And the council at that point decided not to include it. And our committee had it in our sort of, so we didn't make a big thing about it this year, but we supported it. We noted that in our report in December that we supported that and thought it ought to be in. And it didn't get in this year either. But it really is an essential part of voting rights, the right to have a referendum. So the recommendation reads, add a referendum procedure next year to the regulations. The committee supported that addition this year, and the provision's still not in the regs. Add a referendum procedure next year to the regulations. Any comments on that?
No, I think it's excellent.
Okay. Can we have a motion to include that recommendation?
I
I
move.
move. Okay. I
right.
second.
All right, Elizabeth seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay. We are rock and rolling here, team. The next one is amend the regulations to restore the committee's ability to supervise the election contractor directly. And as you saw in my notes,
Yeah.
inserting the village staff into the process resulted in many, many hours of extra work for the election committee this year, not to mention the extra workload on the staff.
Yeah.
Michael did a really great effort to be the middleman and try to communicate back and forth, but there were repeated delays. It took us like 4 rounds, 8 sets of emails, I think, and calls to get the contractor to just correct the ballot packet. And we'd given Michael a written markup of what needed to be fixed, and it still took a week plus, and it was, back and forth, because the contractor kept not doing it. And so that was a real delay. There was also delays in even the most simple tasks, like confirming the receipt of the voter roll and confirming the arrangements for the vote counting session, which they never actually did respond to. So it was a very inefficient process. It was time consuming to the committee because we had to keep going back to Michael again and again. And then poor Michael had to keep going back to the contractor again and again to get them to do these basic things. When the committee contacted the contractor directly, which we did a fair amount the previous year, the task was usually completed correctly the same day with a single call or email. And so the recommended language here is amend the regulations to restore the committee's ability to supervise the contractor directly. Comments on that?
I think one of the things that, you know, if you were talking to the council itself about this, is that, you know, I know a lot of people think that a voter roll is just a valid list.
You break it up, Larry.
But-
Say again.
I said that a lot of people think that the voter roll is just a list of, you know, pretty simple to deal with. But as we all know, that's not the case. Just the task of working with the county, looking at other sources of information, it during that time that we're trying to prepare for the election, having to constantly, you know, keep annoying ourselves and every day, you know, this is still not cleared up, and then trying to communicate with the staff, and then etc. It is an absolute nightmare, and it makes the everybody gets annoyed about it. It creates a huge amount of friction, and it's totally unnecessary.
I agree with that. You know, I mean, Michael and I were talking every day, and he was certainly doing his very best to be helpful and responsive as quickly as he could. But I mean, it was a heck of a lot of work. And as you say, the voter roll verification process is going on at the same time. And it was, Larry, I can only second your comments. You're exactly right. It was totally unnecessary burden. And it did make people cranky like me.
Yeah,
Elizabeth?
and look at the money that we spent last year updating the voter roll, and sure as heck this year, not because it's just the way it is. The voter roll changes dynamically every
Mhm.
year.
That's
So
correct.
that's a lot of work.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, well, no, I had, my question had to do with the structure here, whether you touch on this issue in recommendation 1, which is to ensure independent election management. So your relationship with the election contractor is a part of the election management. And I'm
That's
just
true.
wondering if those two might be combined to ensure, like in 1, independent election management, including supervising the contractor directly. And then we can drop one of the ones, you know, without sounding redundant, because they are
They're
on the same
related.
topic.
They're related. Yeah. Yeah. There's
Just
actually
to tighten
two
it up.
issues. Yeah, there's 2 issues though, in terms of supervising the contractor. One is the election independence. Um, but the other issue is the one we were just talking about, which is just we need to be able to run this complicated process efficiently. And I
Yeah.
think the reason I broke it out into 2 was the efficiency argument is the one we're making here in this amendment.
Right.
So if that's okay, I mean, Elizabeth, you're right, they're totally related.
Well,
Yeah.
But
So
one of the things
listen,
I thought about, go ahead.
yeah,
Larry?
if you see this person walking behind me, that's my maid that is here.
It's not your maid, it's your wife. Margie, hit him with a towel or something. Hey, Margie. Anyway, I do think that the efficiency argument is somewhat different than the overall independence argument. There are other things that go into the independence amendments. It's not just this, although this is a big part of ensuring
Right.
independence. But this is really more about just the efficiency of what is a complex, very
but,
time-consuming
all right, but
project.
that's not what it says in the first line. So,
Okay.
I mean,
So
it doesn't say anything about efficiency, but
I can
it
add
just-
that to say something to improve election efficiency by. Good point.
Okay,
Okay, so I would say, here's the proposal. Amend the regulations to improve election efficiency by restoring the committee's ability to supervise the contractor directly.
Right.
Is that okay? That amended version?
Yep.
okay,
Okay, can we have a motion to adopt that amended version?
okay.
I'm so moved.
Second?
I second.
All right, all in favor of the amended version, please say aye.
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 Okay, 4-0, okay. And Elizabeth, you know, I think it's good to sort of recognize the overlap, but handle them as related issues. Okay, number 7.
Okay.
One of the things that I've been doing for the last month and haven't gotten too far on is Nomi's notion, which I think is an absolutely essential idea, which is to write an administrative practical manual to provide within the framework of the official election regs, just an operational manual for how to handle the ballot curing, the postal tracking. I wrote the paragraph on the postal tracking. It was half a page long.
Yeah.
Voter verification letters. As you know, we have 2 letters now. The original letter that goes out that says, your status is in question, please get in touch with us. And then we had the second postcards this year, which was very efficient. I really liked that innovation, which said, you've been removed from the voter list. If we did this in error, get in touch. And by the way, we've had absolutely nobody throughout the entire process has said that we removed any voter inappropriately. There have been no, I mean, there is an opportunity in the regs for people to challenge a removal, and we've had no challenges. So Larry, you and I did most of the heavy lifting on verifying the voter roll, and I
Yep.
want to commend you for your thoroughness because we did not incorrectly remove anybody.
Yeah,
One of my
I
concerns
find,
is that,
if you go to those houses around 11 at night and bang on the door, you get an answer and
Oh,
you
down.
are so bad.
So much-
Elizabeth, no, we did not do that. I promise we did not do that. But we
Gosh.
did make an awful lot of calls and emails and follow up. And it is a lot of work. And I think that, our friend Boris, who the director of the county board of elections, wishes that he had 100 of us to go clean up the county voter roll. But anyway, this is um, just part of the project here is really, if we didn't have the expertise that we have in our
Okay.
heads, this would be a problem for people to know how to do it. Elizabeth, go ahead.
No, my question was the one I put in a little note, my comment on this, which is, isn't this what you are drafting already?
Yes.
Because
It's what
the-
it's yeah,
Yes.
are we making sort of, we're
Elizabeth,
making a recommendation, but saying we also have a solution that we're drafting, or what?
well, that's what I wanted to talk to you all about
Yeah.
because it's a
Okay.
lot of work. I realize, I do procedures manuals for all kinds of organizations, government
Right.
agencies, nonprofits,
Right.
and generally charge between $20,000 and $20,000 for a project like this, where I am
Mhm.
doing a systematic start to finish
Okay.
operations instruction manual for a complex multi-month process. And, I just started writing down stuff. I have notes on pages of notes. And I realized that I did not, at this moment in my life, have the time or stamina to actually do this in the next month before our
Right.
term is over. So
Maybe
one of the
we
things I
could-
want to have
Maybe
the
we
team
could
do it
get
next year.
an intern or something to put
That
it all
goes
together.
that goes to what I was thinking, because the one that's not here, the one that I've forgotten left off, was Larry's idea about having, the council hire a consultant again this year, a clerical assistant,
help us
basically, to
develop.
help us with the voter roll and to
Mhm.
help us, it occurred to me, with this project, because I could and would probably do for free a process whereby I sat down with that clerical assistant and said, okay, write this down. Here's how you do the ballot tracking. Here's how you do the voter verification letters, the first one and the second letter. Here's how you do the calls and emails to check on our voters. Here's how you check with the county. I mean, I could
Mhm.
talk this through with a clerical assistant and have him or her write it up in a way that would be much more efficient than me spending literally. I mean, this would take me a week, which is why it's a $10,000 to $20,000 job at my regular rates. I could do it, but I think the best way to do it is to hire a clerical assistant for next year and give that person 2 main assignments: the very labor-intensive voter roll verification under our supervision or whoever the committee is, and to sit down with me and a couple of you guys um, and walk through the mechanics, the actual administrative mechanics of how you do these jobs. So anyway, that's why
But
I broke
Marty,
it down. Yeah.
Marty, you've got
Mhm.
templates practically, don't you, for all of these these
I have
steps?
Not yet.
I have 100 documents I
No?
started to put together. Yeah, I do.
Oh,
I have 100 documents I started to put together into a template folder,
Right.
if you will.
uh-huh.
But they're
The
sort of drafts and they're not just.
yeah, the newsletter articles,
They're
the
going to
official
require a bit of
notices,
work.
the weekly wrap-ups. Larry, go ahead.
Well, it's just, Yes, we've got drafts and most of them Marty's prepared, but they're going to need to be looked at and refined. You know the routine. I mean, I don't know about you, but I end up writing things 7 times before they're actually finished.
I usually try to
But-
stop at 3,
But
Larry.
the thing is, they'll always change. The content will always change slightly, but isn't the idea to have the sort of the format down? You know, it's-
Absolutely.
This
Right.
is how it
Right.
was done,
Right.
you know,
And
so it's a model. This is
Right.
not
Yeah, exactly.
prescriptive,
And I-
but it's a model
Templates
that can be used.
confusing if you don't, I mean, templates can be, you need someone who isn't familiar with the process to look at them as well,
Mhm.
type of thing.
Well, let me tell you guys, I spent about an hour starting to just compile the templates because I agree that's an essential component of this kind of operations manual. You know, when I would do this professionally, I would have a template for each different piece, each task. And in an hour, I managed to do about 2 months. And so this is a time-consuming task, which is why I think that to actually complete this operations manual, I'm certainly willing to work on it.
Mhm.
So the way to do it is to do it with a clerical assistant and have that clerical assistant, you know, set up the template
Send-
folders, you know, in sequence, set up
Send-
a schedule. And, you know, I guess I'm just saying that in my life, at this moment in my life, I don't think I want to take on this task of really leading this or doing it by myself because it's a hell of a
So
lot of work. And
why
so,
don't we change the wording of the recommendation then to
Okay.
say, ask, you know, election officials, you know, current or past, whatever, experienced residents or together with experienced residents and a contracted, whatever you would call the person that you would need, consultant, right, to develop so that it's the consultant's going to develop it with advice and consent of the
Right.
experts.
Right.
that's good. I
Something-
like that because, you know, that's what I do for a lot of the federal agencies I work with is I am the
Right,
contractor
and
consultant.
then you should say that the material exists, you know, the large percentage of the material already exists. It's a compilation exercise, right? But it's administrative.
What
Two pieces. Two
Right.
Some
pieces.
of
The
it is-
templates exist in the sense of the material. They are template
And
for
then
everything. It's just time consuming to compile them.
Yeah,
The second piece is the piece that would actually need to be writing, like writing down how you
Okay.
handle
How
the
to.
postal tracking. What do you do?
One
I mean,
to-
that's not written down anywhere. It says you have
One-
postal tracking,
yeah.
doesn't say what to do with it or
One
how
to
you're supposed to do
10.
it.
Are we on number 7 now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
number 7.
What's number 8?
So, I'll get to that in a minute. So the material exists, but the write-up, the administrative instructions, the write-up,
Yeah.
you know, is, you know,
So-
mostly in my head and your heads too, of course.
So I would just mention that in the description that this would involve compiling, you know, existing templates and writing brief instruction, you know, whatever, instructional guides or something like that.
Mhm.
It's the steps, you know,
Right.
but it doesn't have, those don't have to be long things. They can be just bulleted 1 to 10 type of
Right.
things, right?
Right. Do
So
step
that
A, B, C,
and-
D, E, F, G.
Yeah, and
Yep.
try to get things down to 1 page or something, so you don't have a,
Right. Well, we've got a page already that I wrote on just handling the postal tracking, how
okay,
to set it up, how to read the tracking reports, how
Alright.
to follow up if the tracking report
Right.
shows something was mailed but never got received by electric.
right.
So that's a page right there.
And you
And
know
I-
how many of these procedures you've got? I mean, are there
Oh,
a
there are
dozen, are
probably
there 2
40.
dozen, or, huh?
2 dozen, at least 2 dozen, maybe more, maybe twice that.
Okay.
Because a lot of the stuff, you know, the regulations set the requirements. They say you shall have postal tracking. They say you shall do ballot curing. But they don't say how to do it, right?
Right.
And this administrative manual, I mean, Naomi, when you first came up with
Yeah.
this idea, I thought, absolutely, this is needed. We need to get this down on paper so that it's
Right.
somebody walking in
Mhm.
brand new would know what to do at each piece of it. You know, the one piece that we sort of have this done for, this is interesting, is the section of the current regs about how to conduct the forum, which is
Mhm.
very detailed, very specific, and that is an operations manual, basically. That it's now incorporated in the regulations, which is fine with me because it's official in the regs. But on that one, you don't need to add any additional instructions because the actual regulation is operational and concrete enough for people to follow it. That's one of the few places in the regs where you do really have an operational description of what the work entails.
Right.
And to do that for each of the major components of the tasks of the election, it's going to be a bigger job than I initially thought. So the
Yeah.
current draft language, and we could refine this a little, is to ask election officials and experienced residents to work with a contractor/consultant to compile templates of the material that already exists and write up guidelines, administrative guidelines for handling the ballot curing, postal tracking, voter verification letters, etc. So it would be basically do this, but do it via some clerical assistance.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Then are we ready to vote on this one? Anyone want to move that we adopt the recommendation?
I move.
That, I just,
Go ahead,
the
Elizabeth.
lead into it, shouldn't it focus on the task to be done? Instead of asking
Yes.
election officials, it should say, develop,
I will reword it accordingly.
I would say, develop a procedures manual by, and then, enlisting whatever, hiring a
Right.
contractor who will work with an election official, that sort of thing. So it puts the emphasis on the job or task to be accomplished there.
That is exactly a good edit. That's exactly the way I can do it. And I will send this list back to you all for any further
Yeah.
comments before we make it
Okay.
official. But yes,
Okay.
Elizabeth, I think that's exactly the right to do number 7, the way to do it. So we have a vote in favor of to develop a procedures manual by
Yeah.
having, etc.
I
All in
move.
favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, that one's in.
All
right.
It's number 8.
Number 8. This goes back to Nomi to something you said last year, and we all agreed, and that the council didn't do it last year, and they didn't do it this year. But these election regs literally need to be a standing ordinance. We've said that all along. And number 8 basically says that adopt the recommended regulations in 2026. Make sure that they are standard, that they don't have any of these non-standard provisions in them. They need to meet the standard election requirements. We keep going back and forth about things like, the drop box is standard, the forum is standard, the mailed election information packet should be standard. It shouldn't be
You want
canceled.
to make it these ordinances.
Yeah, but if you make it an ordinance, the only thing that does materially that's different is it means that there's a more public process to amend it. Instead
And-
of the council being able to change things as a regulation, basically
Exactly.
in 30 days,
Right.
the ordinance says that you have to have a public process of public comments before you can change an ordinance. And it's just a more stable way
Yeah.
to do.
So can I ask if we might make that number 9? Because I have something I don't think will work well after that.
Okay, so let's make that number 9 if we decide to do it. And Larry, let's say if we're going to adopt this one, and then we'll come back and put in your number 8.
Okay.
Okay, so on this one, do we all agree that this ought to be a standing ordinance instead of just
Yeah, I do.
regulations? Yeah.
So it's to make it an ordinance means like making it a law.
In effect, yeah, an ordinance is a local law. The elections committee procedures are an ordinance. They're not just regulations. They're an ordinance, which means changing them requires a public comment period, hearings, etc. It's just a more formal process, less arbitrary.
Okay. And I understand the reason why. I mean, because you've had
So
different sets of these every year.
Going back and forth.
I think they were hoping that the one you did last year would be the last one, and then that would be the one that would be used.
It would have been.
it's
It would
not-
have been if the council hadn't changed it in January
Well, that's
last year.
true.
Because what we proposed this year was very similar to what the committee
was just-
proposed last year. We
Yeah,
were
it was
just
going-
rolling
going-
back some of those non-standard provisions
Yeah.
that the council initiated. So yeah, in fact, the committee has been very consistent in what we've recommended. These really standard best practices. And then this year we had the task of correcting, if you will, a number of non-standard things that the council had taken the
Yeah.
initiative to put in.
Without
yes.
knowing what the justification was for the changes also.
Right,
Right.
right. They didn't really have to
It
explain to
wasn't,
us
that
anything.
wasn't the very open, I mean, the.
Yeah, it was
the-
not a
the
great
lo-
process.
The logical thinking behind it wasn't shared, was it? I
No,
don't think.
not very well. And I mean,
Yeah.
Arthur did, to his credit, try to explain some things, but it was
Mhm.
really unconvincing. And it was very disconcerting because what's happened in the BMA, just to summarize with, is that in 2022, Peter Kahn proposed a really good set of regulations. The council came in and changed those, with George being the new committee chair. In
Uh-huh.
2023, Paul Weller proposed a very good set of standard regulations. Again, the council and George sort of overruled that. There was this huge community uproar. And in
Mhm.
2023, the council ended up adopting something that was very similar to what we have proposed. Good,
Yes.
standard, clear regulations. In 2024, the committee took all of the previous 5 documents and put them together into a consolidated set of elected regs that was really good. I mean, it was good standard procedures, well organized. It's a lot of work putting that compilation of the regs together. And again,
Sure.
we thought we were home free. We thought we were done. And then in January, the council went and changed a whole bunch of stuff, like making the forum optional, which blew us away.
Mhm.
Because why would you do that? And so here we are looking at 2025. We basically got a pretty good set this year.
Mhm.
And it shouldn't keep rolling back and forth because that's an incredible waste of everybody's time. Not to
Yes,
mention
I
it pisses
agree.
people off. So yeah, this is about standardizing and the consistency. If you look at what Peter did in 2022 and Paul Weller did in
Mhm.
23, I mean, if you the consistency of what the concerned citizens and knowledgeable election officials have recommended is absolutely stunning. It's the same from one year to the next.
Okay.
Any other questions or
Yeah.
comments on that? Again, we can take a final look at the wording on it.
Yeah.
But the idea here is that it should not just be a temporary set of the rules that people can arbitrarily change. I mean, the council right now can change regulations on a whim. They don't have to explain it, they can just do it.
So what
You
is the
know.
proposal?
The proposal says
Oh.
adopt the recommended regulations from 2026 as a standing BMA ordinance with a pool public comment period and provisions that meet the standard election requirements.
Okay, I so move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Yeah, Nomi, this was partly your suggestion. You're so right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Yeah.
Any opposed? Okay, no, 4-1.
And make sure that the justification is really tight, and you say to stabilize the election process,
Mhm,
right? That's one
mhm.
reason that we should not have temporary sets of election rules that can be easily reversed from one year to the next.
Well,
Because, why is that? It's because it's a very, well, it's a very rule-based function, and it's,
but it's also, Elizabeth,
yeah,
the issue is, why should a committee be forced to go through this comedy
yeah,
of hard work
yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a huge amount of
on a
hard
regular
work,
basis?
right,
Okay, that's the whole point. When
Right.
get, set up as an ordinance, that's no longer a huge burden of work that each annual election committee has to
Yeah.
deal with.
So it's not only to stabilize the election process, but it's also an efficiency issue. And maybe that
Mhm.
needs to be in there about saving, the time of volunteers who were so they can, be working on
Yeah,
getting
Yeah,
the
and the
job
actual
done.
right, the actual mechanics, as opposed to
Right.
just this endless cycle of having to re-argue the regs year after year after year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what struck me looking back through the record was how consistent the set of good regs has been for the last 5 years. I mean, it hasn't always been adopted, but that the people who know about how to run elections said the same thing over and over again and had to fight for it over and over again.
right.
That just needs to not happen, you know? And
So
it goes
we-
back to, when I first stood on the committee back in 2015, we had a standard procedure. We wrote the first written election regs. It was voting in person, not by mail, so it was simpler. But we didn't change it every year, and the council never initiated changes in it. If it was changed at all, the initiation came from voters who needed something clarified or from the committee members who were doing the work. It would not top down from the council. So, my experience with that set of election rules was that it was really simple. Once you wrote them, they're good to go. And they didn't change for 5 years. So
Do number 8 now.
say again?
So can I do number 8 now? We're
Yes, so
going-
I think we've had our vote to approve number 9 here. So give me
Yeah,
number 8,
just-
Terry.
Get
Number
efficiency
8
in the
has
description.
number 8 is, I would like to change this. So it is the election committee that approves the work that the Electech has done and verifies the veracity of the election vote.
Correct. We certify the election.
And so it seems kind of ridiculous that we would go through the expense of having a driver come down from New Jersey, hang around all day to take votes that are given at the
At the
sidewalk
Dropbox.
drop
Yeah.
box, when they should be taken up to the office by the election committee who verifies the vote and opened and incorporated in the vote. We don't need to worry about them having a car accident in transport or some other issue. We are the party, the group that verifies the vote. So we look at them and these votes we verify. Why this
what-
extra cost?
You're
and
saying we shouldn't have a
work?
contractor,
We
period?
shouldn't
Or,
have somebody picking up the ballots from the sidewalk, taking them up and having Electech do it, and then we have to look at them and approve them as well. This is ridiculous. We're the
So
ones that do look at it. And in the past times, how did we deal with sidewalk ballots? Well, the committee took them upstairs, looked at them and approved them, or not.
That's when we had direct vote counting, right? With
Yes.
ourselves. We haven't had that. We've had mail vote elections. And one of the things that's really critical about mail vote elections is ballot security.
Yep.
And there, unless we actually had, the only way that we could count those votes was, number one, we can't count until the vote counting day, which this year was May 21st. Election day with the drop box was May 6th, and we, 2 weeks later is when we do the vote counting.
Mhm.
So where would we store those securely? Well, they can't be stored in a village office because even a locked file drawer could be opened easily with a crowbar. That's not secure storage, or not secure enough for election documents. We have this, what we have, 173, sealed ballots, right, from the Dropbox. And we could
don't
put them
have
in a
a-
PO box. We could store them for 3 weeks or 2 weeks in a PO box. That would be more
We
secure.
don't have a secured capability in the office of the village?
We don't have a safe that only the VMA election committee could access.
that's neutral, Larry, that.
Yeah,
that is
independent, goes back to election independence.
Independent.
And it's
Uh-huh.
partly protecting the staff, because imagine the uproar if we had, say, 100 sealed ballot envelopes waiting to be counted in a locked drawer in the election office, right? That's, sort of minimum level security. And somebody comes in one night and, keys to the office, there are a number of people have keys to the office, not just the staff. I don't have one, but other people do. And so somebody comes in at midnight and pries open the drawer and takes the ballots, right? The staff is technically responsible for the premises. So poor Michael or whoever the village manager would be comes in the next morning at 9 a.m. and there's been a robbery of the ballots. And it's on his territory. He's responsible for the custody of the physical premises. And whoa, I would never put a staffer in that position. If you wanted to not have Electech, Electech has to come and drop the drop off cost. They bring, it's not that inefficient from their point of view.
And then they have to drive it up there.
And so, yeah, so they come down, they bring the Dropbox at 4, they drive it back at 8 with, the ballot envelopes that we've secured. So it's basically a routine part of their election mechanics. And so they bring the Dropbox, like I say, they bring the Dropbox at 4, at 8 o'clock, their driver is there to pick up. They also have, by the way, since we do our elections now, we have been doing them the last 2 years, the first Tuesday in May, they also have another local election. I think a village of Chevy Chase has its election the same day, and Electech does theirs. So they're doing 2 adjacent villages the same day, and basically a driver gets here by 4, with drop boxes set up for us by 5. 8 o'clock, we count how many envelopes we've got in it, like we did. Y'all did the process this year beautifully. So it actually is not that inefficient. They're not coming down here just for this. They have to come down for the drop box anyway. And I think it is just so much more secure, probably legally more sufficient too, but certainly just in terms of security, um, so much more secure to have those ballot envelopes from the Dropbox actually in Electech's custody in New Jersey, so that our staff is not put at any jeopardy of a break-in, so the committee is not then tearing its hair out because half the ballots got stolen. I mean, you look at what can happen at a local level, and it does happen. Um, and if you have the ballots going back with the Dropbox, to Electech, and then you count them all at the end, that's more efficient from their counting end too. You get a total tally. But it's just way more secure, Larry, to have them do it. I mean, I guess I feel pretty strongly about this. I hadn't thought about it in any detail, but I think it's efficient to have Electech bring the Dropbox and then go back home with the Dropbox and the envelopes that we count the envelopes, so we know how many we gave them. And we have a record of that. And then come the counting day, 2 weeks later, they have the ones they got by mail, and they got the ones from the Dropbox all in one place, and they give us a total count. Does that make sense to you?
It might. I'm curious about what happens to the ballots that Electech has. Are they ever sent down to us?
Yeah, one of the requirements in our regs is, and this has been true going back to the days when we even did in-person ballots, is that the Electech has to consolidate a box of all this stuff. They have the envelopes, they have the actual ballots, all the
Mhm.
election materials that ended up in Electech's office in New Jersey come back to VMA, to our archives.
Okay,
And
well, aren't those when they get to us, given to stored in the office? And then and again, the office staff is under the same risk on
except
those
the
ballots?
election's over. When they're stored in the office, the election results have been posted, it's all done. There's no way you can have somebody steal ballots and tamper with an election because it's all done.
Larry,
The
Larry, I think you're beating a dead horse.
Okay, fine.
but it is interesting because the archival sort of keeping of the ballot. I mean, right now the requirements are only that the after the election's all done, no way to tamper with the vote. It's done. The materials all come back from Electech in a box, and Michael stores them in the office for 6 months. One of the things I would like to do, Larry, with you and me, if you have time, or actually Nomi or Elizabeth, I would love to do with you guys as well, is actually sit down this year, not this week, not next week, but look through and actually look through those ballots and mark the voter roll to indicate who actually voted and who didn't. One of the standard things the county does is they keep a record. You got 500 voters, right? 300 of them voted. Well, who didn't? And it's not that you would remove somebody from the voter roll for not voting. That's illegal. You can't remove somebody just because they didn't vote. But it would be really interesting to sort of keep a running tally of who are the regular voters and think about down the road, next year's committee can do this, how to make more people what we call regular voters as opposed to sporadic voters or non-voters. To think about how to motivate people to vote. I mean, we certainly put out a lot of notices saying, friendly, please vote, it's important, local democracy matters. But anyway, I don't know if you'd like to do that with me, Larry, or not, but I would like to sit down with one of you guys and just look through the materials that have now come back from Electech. Hold on one second. Just because I'm curious. And it would be possibly useful in the future to look and see who our regular voters are. Elizabeth?
I'm not sure about that, but I mean, I think there's so many different reasons why people vote or don't vote, I mean, there are lots of circumstantial things that happen and environmental
Sure.
factors, whether it'd be worth the time it would take to log that. But I just had, I was thinking about this, the news this week, the Justice Department now has asked the state of Colorado Election Commission to produce all of the voting records for the past 5 years or something,
Oh,
or the
Lord, that's
past 3
millions
elections.
of records.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they've asked for things that aren't
Yeah.
normally tracked, but it makes you wonder. I mean, talk about Big Brother. That's scary,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
What do they
Yeah.
want to do that for, right? So this is
Right. Well, there's been election purges or attempts by Republicans to purge people,
uh-huh.
who didn't vote in the last 2 years, say. So
Well, I don't
that's,
think
again,
I don't think that's the
I don't think that's
motivation.
their, yeah. Anyway, I was just curious about, to actually sit down and go
Yeah, I
through
mean,
and look
sure,
at
it would
the
be
box.
curious. That might be a good source of going and tapping people for trying to do some,
Okay,
know,
You know,
engaging them to run for election.
is there
Mhm.
anything else?
the
I'm,
problem is that there are so many variables, including the fact that this was an uncontested
Right,
election.
Yes.
True.
So you have to factor in, you have to do a multivariate analysis to do this. You have to get a statistician to look at the variables to
right. And you'd
make
want to
it.
do it across multiple years, right, Nomi?
Yeah, you do. You can't, yeah, you can't. And not to mention that residents come and go, so it
Mhm.
depends how, the smaller families with little kids, they don't get engaged. There are too many variables to determine which
Mhm.
people vote and which people don't.
Right.
yeah, but
And
you mean to tell me that when we mail out a numbered ballot to a known person, that we can't get it back and identify which of those people returned ballots? I mean, isn't
Sure we can,
so
sure we
then
can.
why is it
that's the exit.
why is it
Electech could be asked to do that. They'd probably charge us for it, but they would have a record of that because they sent out the ballots. They have a record of who returned their ballots.
Mhm.
it's the same data, just a different quarry.
Right, right. Different query on the same data. And
Too
it could
many
be included.
variables. Too
But,
many
again, if we wanted to
For
sort of
each
do that, we
year.
could. I'm just curious. I want to take a look at the box this year for my own curiosity. But in the meantime, I think that it is probably not a great idea to have the committee try to store those 100 or 170 Dropbox sealed ballot envelopes at all. I don't even want to keep them overnight.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree. I agree
Well,
with
why
that.
don't you check with Boris? I mean, there may be some legal obligation here to do that.
To
I think
do,
what we have is a really smooth system that we have perfected, and I wouldn't tamper with it.
it has worked well the last 2 years. That's true.
So
They bid on time.
I don't know why we even question it.
Hypothetically, Larry, it would be possible to do a mail vote election without a contractor. We'd have to have a
I'm
secure,
not suggesting that. Not at
okay.
all.
Well, in that case, as long as we have a contractor, I would prefer to have the contractor do all the ballot counting. They put the
Yeah,
ballots
I'm
through the
just saying,
machine.
You
if you
could
want
go
to
to
know the
you
data
could go to a
of who
bank and
voted,
rent a safety deposit box.
You'd have to, if you were going to do it locally.
Right.
If you didn't have
Yeah.
Electric, we'd have to run a safety deposit
that's
box
not
to
the
store it.
point. The point was that Electech has the data of who voted and who didn't.
Okay,
Mhm.
that was on the other
If we
point,
want to
but
get that, we could do
I think that if you're going to do that, you have to have a pretty good reason for why you're doing it. That's all
Right,
I'm saying, because it
right.
seems like,
It does seem invasive.
yes,
I'm just
that's
Really?
the
curious.
word. That's the word
I
I was
can tell
thinking.
you that I have called up my Jamie Raskin's office, and one of the first things that I hear is, "Oh yes, I see you voted last time."
The county does it routinely. They have
So,
big consultants who do it.
so every that's a very
It's a
common
routine thing
They
done.
certainly
at a
know
larger
who's
level.
given money to them.
Yeah, they
They're
keep track of
tracking
that
that.
too.
Well, when
They
you ask them to pay attention or to do something, one of the issues is they look to see whether you are being involved in the process, whether you vote.
right, whether you're a
But
voter, because
for us, it would be like Big Brother. I don't approve of that at all.
yeah, Naomi, I'm picking up on the same sort of concern in sort of my gut feeling here,
Not
which
at
is that
all.
it's
Yeah.
one thing to do that at the county level where you've got what 500,000 voters in Montgomery County. It's another thing to do it at a local where you only have 600 voters total. It does seem um, too big brotherish and too invasive. And, my personal curiosity about, making a list of just noting on the voter roll who actually voted and who didn't. That's just my curiosity. That is not a sufficient reason
But
to do it.
no, it
So
isn't.
I'm not sure why it came up then. I don't know why it was brought up.
Well, I just thought it would be fun to do, but no, I don't think it should be here. So on this
No.
notion about having the committee either count, we don't want to count the ballots before the vote counting day because that can, I mean, people are still voting after May
So-
6th.
But we abandoned that. Everybody said they didn't think it was a great idea, and we've dropped it. So
Yeah,
Okay, so-
let's
thing-
finalize this discussion on
Yeah,
recommendations.
exactly.
Okay, we have approved 9, or 8,
Eight.
actually 8, yeah, total of 8. Does anybody have any others that I left out?
Nope.
Nope.
So you're
Okay.
gonna send around a cleaner draft then?
I'll send around a cleaner draft, and Elizabeth, I'm incorporating your changes. They were very helpful. Thank you again. So look for that by hopefully tomorrow night for me. So we're done with that piece, the sort of recommended action for next year. And, again, thank you. I think these are all great ideas. The election report itself will have also another section in it. It's got the the basic report, it's got the recommendations page or page and a half, and then it would have the forum document that we all approved, that Elizabeth did, and note with Nomi too. And then the last piece of it may or may not be the document that Elizabeth and Larry worked on, which is called Council Draft VMA Election Committee Proposal for Council Action to Enhance Community Participation. And you all, I think, had that.
Well, I have done little, if anything, on it. I really, unfortunately, haven't had the time to work on it.
Okay.
Most
Well,
of,
one thought I had, and this, Larry, is partly based on my conversations with you. The first thought I have is, Elizabeth, thank you. This is a really nice piece of work.
yeah,
Um,
it is. It is. It's excellent.
And the second piece is that, from what Larry and I had talked about earlier, it's a little off the actual responsibilities of the election committee. I think I would be more comfortable personally if it was not part of our official committee report at the June council meeting, but was presented by the 4 of us. I think all 4 of us should sign
Yeah.
it if we're willing to. I certainly would.
Yeah.
As a separate opinion. I mean, we're people who've been basically, hip deep in this stuff for an entire year.
Well, I think that maybe one of the issues is how to get more people involved in volunteering for committees and the council. And this
That is-
information is being looked at and prepared by, what we need to look at is a way to get this to individual people so that people get a chance to read it and realize
Right.
what actions, how helpful it can be. Okay.
Well, listen, what's involved in presenting a proposal to the council as a resident at the council meeting?
Very simple and straightforward. You would send an email to Katie as the chair and say,
Mhm.
Katie, I and other residents would like to present this proposal at the council meeting. Please put it on the agenda. And you could CC Michael. Yeah, I would send it to Katie with a CC to the rest of the council and a CC to Michael. And say, you're the lead on it, but, I would happily put my name on it too if you want me to. But basically, I would say Elizabeth, from Elizabeth to Katie with CCs to all the folks. And, I would like to present this proposal, which has been discussed by a number of other residents at the council meeting on June 6th.
Well, it was also, I mean, is there, it comes right out of the election committee work, though. I mean, the whole
It
point here
does.
was we were dismayed because there were only 2 people that ran for office.
Mhm.
And we know how difficult it is getting committee members. So
Yeah.
I don't see why, I mean, what the election committee is doing is at the end of the year, reflecting back on the year and saying, this is a proposal that could be considered
I see.
to
So you would prefer.
address these. Well, I mean, I think it's directly related to an election issue. That's why it got started in the first place, was
Yeah.
the idea of how can we tell people who are interested in serving what they're running for? Because there's not
Yeah,
a single
what it
piece of
involves.
documentation that says what the office entails.
Yeah.
So to
Here's a
me, it's
suggestion.
really related to it's related to the election form. It's related to what just.
Okay. Here's my suggestion. I
Yeah,
think you make a good
okay.
point. You
So
make
how
several good
best
points
to
there.
do it? Sure.
Let's do it from the election committee. If we all agree tonight, we can do it from the election committee as a separate standalone proposal. So it's not part of the committee report, which has the other
Right.
stuff in it.
It's
And
sort
But
of
it's a
way
standalone proposal. That actually might be better in the
Proposal to
sense of,
increase village the members' participation in our local government.
Yep. So Larry,
Mhm.
would you support that?
Yeah,
Good. We'd have, so then we
But-
have two documents for the June meeting. One is the election committee, final election report, which has the stuff we already approved. And the other would be this, standalone proposal, but also from the election committee, not just from Elizabeth and other residents, but from the election committee saying, we see a need for this.
Right.
Does that sound good to people?
yes.
Elizabeth, does that work for you?
Yeah, right, that I would feel happy about that because also we've kind of talked it up and Art, has expressed a lot of interest in seeing the terms of reference, the position description.
Okay.
So,
I do think that there is a whole other related issue, which is a responsibility of council members, especially those who've been around on the
Mhm.
council for a long time, to do succession planning.
yes,
So I think it should be the responsibility of council members who've been on the council for X number of years. We don't need to be arbitrary about it. To look for, on their own, to recruit council members on a regular basis, especially if they plan to leave the council, and even if not.
mhm,
Yeah.
That is, in my nonprofit world, a responsibility that cannot be too much to ask of council members.
I
People who've been
like
on,
that. I
Yeah.
agree, Nomi. I agree. I think that succession planning has been one of the weaknesses that we've had.
Well,
exactly,
Um,
exactly.
that can
and-
be added, into the part up above the first couple of paragraphs, where it sort of says what the need is.
Can you draft a couple sentences for that, Elizabeth? I think it's an important point.
Yeah, well, Naomi, look at the way it leads, look at the opening and see
Uh-huh.
how that idea could be inserted there to supplement what it says already.
I actually think that it should be a whole other separate responsibility of council members.
Oh, you mean it should be an actual bullet that there's another
Yes.
Yeah, like-
responsibility?
1,
Is-
2,
Yes.
3, and then the
Uh-huh.
fourth one would be, or yeah, 1, 2, 3. The fourth one would be develop succession planning methodology.
Yeah.
Well, not
And-
methodology, but you're saying
The
it's
the
more active
responsibility,
than-
right?
Process.
Yeah,
Process.
process is the word I want. Yeah, develop a council succession process. And that did, one of the things that I realized as I was reading through this, thinking about it, was, back in 2015, when we were writing the first set of election regs for the in-person voting, one of the things that what was her name? Lauren Beal and I did was we held an open house just for the community about running for the council. And Elizabeth, here it is 10 years later. And that was a one-off, right? We did it that year just because we didn't, we were all new on the election committee. I think there was one person who'd done it before. We're writing the regs, right? And we thought we need to have an open house. People don't know this stuff at all. We were learning it, I was learning from Frank Carell how he'd done his stuff and Bob Friedman how he'd done his stuff,
Right.
And the open house was very successful. We had probably, I guess, 50 or 60 people came. Lauren Beal held it at her house. There was lots of nice food. I made a presentation, about election procedures, and one of the council members, I don't remember now who, might have been Susan Fattig even, I don't know. But one of the council members came and made a nice presentation about what it's like to serve in the council.
Mhm.
And it was a really friendly afternoon event on a Sunday afternoon at somebody's house. But it was the kind of combination of get to know your council functions and sort of recruitment and engagement. It was just a fun event. And here you are 10 years later, Elizabeth, saying basically,
We need the same thing, yeah.
we need the same thing in the form of an annual
Right.
meeting with an open forum. And I
Right.
thought, well, by George. And I wanted to tell you, it did work well back in 2015, 16, when we first did
Yeah.
it, me and
When
Lauren
I
Beal.
said preceded by a half an hour sort of meet and greet social opportunity for people to
Mm.
see each
Wine
other.
and cheese, wine and
Yeah,
cheese.
right.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what Chevy Chase Council does. The
Yep.
Chevy Chase Village, they have something
Mhm.
in that format. But
Yeah, I was glad you
okay,
included the
so,
references.
but if you have a good phrase for develop a council succession planning process to make it a little bit more specific I mean, unless you think it's self-explanatory enough, but would it, another phrase to kind of build that up is to keep the,
Council member succession planning process.
yeah.
You know,
But that-
folks who've been on the council forever should
Mhm.
really plan, should really think forward about recruiting others to replace
Yeah.
themselves.
Okay, that's what I need. Mhm.
And
Yes,
that it is a responsibility of the job. That if you're gonna
exactly.
step off, if you're gonna
It's a
step off a
job res-
nonprofit
It
board,
should
you
be
recruit your
part
replacement.
of the job responsibility.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
You can't
Yeah.
just exit without mentoring, without recruiting, without
exactly.
making sure that our village has new leaders.
All right, that's very good. I got it. Thank you, Naomi. Those are the
That's
words I was
great.
looking for.
That's great. The only other change that I had on this document, Elizabeth, was where you have safety. I would
Yeah,
make that this is in your Annex 1, right? I would put safety and infrastructure because Larry and I share this ongoing concern about the fire hydrants and the council's responsibility for managing the village infrastructure is
Uh-huh.
part of its municipal responsibility legally.
okay.
And maintaining the streets, maintaining the public sidewalks so that the
Yeah,
safety.
I'll add the fire hydrants at the maintenance of,
Right.
Yeah.
And WSSC is responsible for the sewer lines, but if there's a problem, our village has to get involved. Who calls Pepco, right? We do, right? The village does. And again, we have a village manager to do that on a day-to-day basis. We've had so many gas leaks over here on Chestnut and Taylor Street. Poor Michael probably has the gas company's phone number memorized, but that whole business of infrastructure. So I would just say safety and
Okay, I'll add that
infrastructure.
to the title. Okay,
Yeah,
got
if you
it.
would, that'd be great. That's the only change I had. Larry, did you have anything else on that? Are you muted?
He said he hadn't really looked at it yet. He was gonna go back and, read it again. I think he hadn't had time.
I'm gonna have to
Okay.
read it again.
Yeah, well, if you'd look it over, Larry, and get back to Elizabeth with any, even wording changes, I mean,
Okay,
I think
I'll print it out. I'll go down to the Whitney Museum tomorrow.
Mhm.
And I'll sit there and I'll read every word. And
you are a dear. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yes,
Mhm.
that's a great
But
place to
just
read, by the way.
Make sure, Larry, you're reading the latest version, right? Look
I sent
for
it
the
to him
one.
today. I forwarded to him today, Elizabeth. So
All right, fine.
it's
Okay.
Larry, it's the one that I forwarded to you today.
And now we've just added a few things, so I mean, I could try putting those in and sending it around tomorrow with those in it, but,
That'd be good. That'd be helpful.
okay. I have
And
to
I
go.
believe we have a consensus to present it at the June meeting from the election committee as a separate proposal, as a standalone, rather than burying it in our election committee report on the election. Is that correct? Did I get?
Which means we would actually, refer to it and
Yes,
sort of,
as the proposal, we would give it a name, proposal to enhance community participation. And I wouldn't just say the 25-26, right? I mean, it's for this year, but proposal to enhance community participation in council elections and committees. Because
Mhm.
I mean, we're talking about setting up a process here, which I think is much needed. So yeah, I hope they'll take action in the next year. The council certainly should pick this up right away. But it will be let me just ask for a vote on that. Do we have a motion to make this a standalone proposal that the election committee will present, along with, but separate from our routine election report?
I make a motion.
Is there a second?
second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, we got 4-0. And again, thank you all for the great work on this. This is really focusing in on what needs to be done here. And boy, smart managers.
Well,
They look at it and say,
just a
okay,
question about mechanics. At the council meeting, does this get discussed at, when you're doing committee reports? Is that where it shows up?
you should, or I should
Or
help
would
you.
it be residents' comments or
It
what?
would be a proposal on the agenda.
Oh, it'd be
A
on the
proposal on the
agenda.
agenda. Right, so
Okay.
it would not be dependent on the committee reports. It would be a separate, and I think, I mean, Katie would be probably receptive to that. I can't speak for her, but,
Uh-huh.
this proposal is important, and this proposal should be a separate agenda item at the council meeting. And we don't need to wait to do it. I mean, if we can finalize this week and get it to them this week, that'd be great. And calling Katie, you and I can talk tomorrow about calling Katie, or you could even call her tonight to say, we're gonna have a proposal that we all, chipped in on, and that we need a standalone agenda item on this.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's the way it's handled. And it could be before the committee reports or after the committee reports. Wherever, I mean, the council decides where things go on the agenda. But
Mhm.
it makes sense to me that this is a fairly important document and should be a separate agenda item. Okay,
Okay. All right.
any
Good.
other comments on this?
No.
Anyone else? Well, thank you, team. Our work is almost done. Let's see what I have here. We talked about the procedures manual. We've talked about the report. We now have a standalone proposal as well. Any other election issues?
I don't think so.
Okay. If anyone has any further recommendations, to add to our recommendations list, I've been in such a fog because of this anesthesia reaction that, there might be something I missed. But if you have an idea that you want to add an additional recommendation, we can do that anytime, over the next week, before I put the final recommendations election report together. But in the meantime, we can go ahead and get this proposal ready to rock and roll this week. So if you think of anything else that we should be addressing, it's not too late to add. But right now, I think we're basically done, and I will put together the draft election committee report, and Elizabeth will take the lead in finalizing this proposal report, and we're good.
Okay.
Larry, Nomi, anything else?
No, not for me.
Well, I just want to say a million thanks to all of you. Every single one of you pulled your weight and then some, and you certainly picked me up and carried me when I was failing. So, thank you for rescuing me.
I will add my thank you to the committee for the work they did this year. And if you heard me at La Ferme, if you were listening, you would have heard me trying to talk up a number of candidates over my
Oh,
glass of wine.
Oh,
And they're-
good.
So
Arthur, recruit.
I was
Thank you.
out there solidly recruiting.
That's
Thank you,
great.
thank you, thank you.
So,
That's great.
Marty, I also wanted to thank you because last week I've never had so much fun listening to a person rambling after anesthesia
Yeah.
quite as well as you did.
It's
That
so
was
funny.
that was the fentanyl they gave her, right?
Totally. It's just so weird. And Keith Allen even, I love Keith Allen dearly. He's just like my favorite uncle. But he says, Marty, you're always so clear and well spoken and da da da. And I mean, I think he was taken aback because I was like a space cadet, and it was just. I'm glad it was amusing, and I'm always glad to be entertainment for my friends. So thank you again.
Okay.
Anything else, guys, before we wrap this up? Again, I just think you've been so terrific. I could not ask for better friends and colleagues. And Arthur, thank you for your kind words as well, and for being our Zoom master, et cetera, et cetera. So, anything else before we go?
Thank you. We could not have done this work without you, Marty. We all know you did all of it.
I just kept the train on the track.
You
I was
certainly
saying
did.
to somebody the other day that running an election process is like you got all these stations, you got to schedule, you got to get all this stuff done by this schedule, you got to be at this station by this time and this station by that time. And, I mean, what I contribute is that I know the track and I kept the train on time.
Yeah, you laid the track.
Well, that too. I can feel the, from pounding a hammer and the nails into the track, to lay the track.
All
Guys,
right.
I'm going to close with just a million thanks to you all. And it is 8:47 p.m. Can we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All in
Second.
favor? Second? I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. We are adjourned as of 8:47 p.m.